Is that the middle finger you showed me? And we are live. We've got the thumbs up and we are ready to go. Hello and welcome back to a new session of Wastewater Wisdom Live. Back again with our Tuesday live sessions. We were missing last week because it was Glee. It was the Glee week. It's usually in September, but they've brought it forward to the last week of June for many reasons, due to kind of supply chain issues and also some feedback they had from manufacturing customers that wanted it just brought forward. So yeah, that was a very good show. You weren't there, were you?
I wasn't there. I mean, I very much missed out this time. Sounds like it was a really positive show.
You enjoyed the peace and quiet in the office,
It
didn't you?
was a bit quiet in the office. We're about 50% down in terms of our normal staff members, but we had progress with some things here. And yeah, Glee was obviously quite a bit more preparation and quite a lot of more products put forward this year. So I imagine it was quite good. How was it on the?
It was very good, very, very good. We got to meet a whole bunch of new customers. The sales agents that we work with in the various regions brought some of their customers onto the stand. So that was kind of the first time they were seeing our products and our FSDUs for the first time before taking them into stock. And that was the first time we met them as well. So it helped to kind of cultivate the relationships with not only our sales agents, but their customers. We had some incredible meetings with new potential customers as well, and new conversations with new sales agents too. So overall, it was a very, very good show.
And I imagine you did some recording whilst you were there as well.
We did. We had some videographers on the stand for a day and a half, I would say, to film a load of content, get some really nice conversations or capture some conversations we had with customers, got some wonderful testimonials from them as well. So no, yeah. We were well prepared. It was a very good show. I think all in all, a very, very good show.
Yeah,
and Gertie and Garth were there. We had large cardboard cutouts done. We wanted to get mascot costumes, but we couldn't get them done in time. So we had like these cardboard cutouts, and they asked like, how big are they? And I said, well, they got to be in proportion. And the people who got them done by, they can only do them a meter wide. So they're a meter wide by 1.4 meters high.
Is that the dimensions?
Yeah, well, I said, because the thing is, I didn't want this to be out of proportion. And if they're like 6 foot, they're going to be taller than me, so it's going to be weird. And if they are then like 6 foot, they'd be about 1.5 meters wide. So that's the actual scale of them. So they'd be really out of proportion. If our stand, even though we had a big stand, if they were like 2 meters high, but like 1.5 meters wide, 1.7 meters wide, that's a lot of space they're taking up.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was good fun. We've still got them. They managed to survive the journey, so they'll be put up in the showroom later this week.
Super.
But no, it's a very good show. And did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, it was very pleasant. Thank you. Enjoying what time we have. Yeah, racing away now. We obviously in July, moving into the Q3. So we've got lots to plan for that, and then catch up with a few colleagues during our new 90 minutes that we need to get sorted. So lots internals to the business that need to get to preparation for the next 3 months. So looking forward to it.
And you know what's even more important? First week of July.
Oh, go on.
We're back to pre-season.
Oh, you really?
Yep. So Tottenham and many other Premier League clubs
I did see that some transfers were starting to go through.
So it's not long. It's only a month away till the season starts. That's the most exciting part. But anyway, we'll get into today's Wastewater Wisdom Live session. And the main topic, of course, as you might have seen in the description of today's session, is what is the cost of a sewage treatment plant? And David is going to run through the details of what a sewage treatment plant costs.
Okay, so when we're looking at wastewater treatment, it's, of course, very important, as we said before, to really gain an understanding of an appreciation of the full project. So it's not just purchasing a wastewater treatment system. You've got to think about location, installation, and of course the running of the system going forward. So first things first, depending on the scale of the project, whether it's going to be a one-off small domestic system for a property, that's going to be obviously different from potentially it's going to be a commercial application. A commercial application could look at lots of individual systems where each homeowner will adopt their own system and look after it, or it could be that you've got a group of houses all going down as one tank, and in which case it's more likely to be adopted by a local council to look after it. So there's that to consider. Outside that, of course, we need to, of course, reflect the cost per population. So for a standard domestic system, you're probably going to start off around about £1,800 for a small system for a wastewater treatment plant. This is, and of course, you've you can take into consideration how much that's going to be per person if you just wanted to work out how cost effective it's going to be. So you can divide that through by the number of people it's going to be serving. Of course, when you talk about the commercial end, although the price of the system is going to be a lot more expensive, certainly if it's going to be a large wastewater treatment system supporting multiple properties, of course, we then divide that through by how many people it's going to be supporting at the end. It's of course going to be a lot more cost effective. So that's just something to bear in mind when you're looking at the overall project outlook. You also need to take into consideration, I think, the type of treatment plants. I mean, typically here at Graph, we talk about sequence batch reactors, but there are other types of treatment process in the market to consider, and depending on the effluent quality you need to achieve, whether you need to have additional treatments to not only look after the BOD, the suspended solids and ammonia, we've come across more recent difficult constraints to comply to, like the phosphorus and nitrogen, and whether the treatment plant alone can achieve those quality in the discharge, or whether you need to add on additional layers of treatment to achieve that. So again, something else for the customer to think about: where am I discharging to? What effluent parameters do I need to conform to? So that's something to consider. But of course, there's each manufacturer will have, even of course us will have different ways of approaching these things. So gain an understanding of what maintenance and how the system works and how you can support that and ensure it's going to do that going forward. Outside of that, of course, we've already kind of touched on it, it's installation. Now, with installation, of course, are we looking at a brand new installation for a new property? It's going to be the first system they have. You could have an existing building, which they've got a septic tank, which you're looking to upgrade to a wastewater treatment plant, or it could be that the treatment plants on the property has failed and you're looking to build on that, or potentially look to upgrade it to meet with the new stringent effluent qualities that are coming into place. So there's kind of different options or situations where you need to consider upgrading or replacing a system. And with installation, of course, are you going to be building on something? Are you going to have to decommission something and implement something new? Of course, there's groundworks, there's electrics, and all this sort of stuff that needs to be considered. So again, speak with some people who are involved in the business, this business sector, gain an understanding of what needs to happen, so you've got a much better outlook towards the end of the project of how much it's going to cost you. And then finally, once you've got your system in place, of course, there's the running costs. With any wastewater treatment system, there's electrical requirements, apart from potentially something like a sand infiltration after a septic tank. But that's a different topic away from today. But for most treatment plants, you'll have electricity supporting introducing oxygen into the tank, which is how pretty much all treatment plants works. It's incorporating more oxygen into the water to break down the incoming foul water. So with that, whether you've got a compressor, whether you've got some sorts of some pump system, or whether you've got rotating discs, wherever it might be, we've got some sort of mechanism turning oxygen into the water to improve the environment for them to breed, grow. So we've got much better quality of effluent. So with the cost of system, again, I stress on this channel so much, really try and gain an understanding of what's not only the supply cost is, what the installation cost is going to be, running costs. All this needs to be considered when we're looking at a wastewater treatment system for both domestic and commercial applications.
Perfect. And I think you've explained that incredibly well, not in terms of, because a lot of the time when people think about the cost of it, it's just what's the initial purchase, but there's obviously more to it. It's actually, the cost of installation, the maintenance, and commission potentially on top of that as well.
Yes.
Perfect. That sums that all up. I hope that answers that question in as much detail as David gave. So now it's time for the project recap for this week. And today we've got a bit of a different one. We're putting a spin on it, as requested by David. So we don't have a project to potentially show you in terms of the install, but we're looking kind of on the later side that David mentioned before in terms of the commissioning. So there's a few things that you've noticed in recent commissionings and recent setups that have been installed recently that you want to discuss?
Yes, very much so. This is kind of draw the customer's attention mainly back to our systems, of course. It's important in all systems, but particularly with the Graph treatment plant. Basically, the way we introduce, of course, the treatment process into our tanks is to incorporate oxygen into the tank. And with the Graph system, we do this by diffusers, whether this be the long tubular type we can see in the photos, or round disc type, which we see in some of the larger systems. And the positioning of these diffusers is quite important within the tank. We can see from the photos, certainly the slide on the screen at the moment, we've got two different options. They might not look different, but they are. You can see on the initial photo, we've got two diffusers running lengthways in the tank, following the line of the scum baffle. And in the second photo, we've got them basically rotated through 90 degrees, and we've got them going lengthways.
Yep.
This second option is the optimal position, in which this basically encourages oxygenation of the complete tank. So we're getting not only oxygen in the primary settlement side, but of course in both chambers. So we're getting a fully aerobic chamber. This basically really helps generate and increase the oxygen level within the tank. So we get our treatment process happening the way we want it to. So if you do have a tank and you're installing it, or if you are basically getting your tank emptied and you want to look down into the tank just in case you want to check on this thing, go for the option where they're going across the length of the tank. So we've got they're going basically from inflow to outflow in terms of their direction. That's the optimal position. And yeah, if we can get them slightly under the scum baffle wall, that means we get a fully aerobic chamber, which is the optimal process for our tank. The next thing I wanted to talk about on the next slide is basically the type of aeration process. So we've got two photos here. It's quite difficult to see, but hopefully you can gain an appreciation of what I'm trying to explain here. On the first photo, we can see that, which is a bit darker, we can see that the bubbles are really quite fine in the tank. So we've got very small fine bubbles flowing to the top of the surface. And this is really good for getting the oxygen we're pumping into the tank to really dissolve into the water. And that's what we want to help the bacteria breed and grow and break down the incoming foul water. In the next slide, you can see that the surface is a little bit more volatile. And what happened when we pumped this tank down on the right hand side, we noticed that the diffusers were lapped over each other. On the previous slide, we saw that they were kind of like parallel alongside each other. We found when we drained the tank of this one, they were forming a cross shape. So that means that we're only getting oxygen come out half of each diffuser. So we're getting very, very low oxygen going into the tank. And the oxygen that was going into the tank was coming up in large bubbles. Of course, with the larger bubbles, we can't get it dissolved into the water. So we won't get the dissolved oxygen level we want in the tank to help our bacteria. So it's just something to look out for. If you've got very volatile big bubbles coming to the surface of your treatment plants where we haven't got the water dissolving into the water, it could be that the diffusers in the bottom of the tank are not lined up in an ideal position. It is easier to, of course, correct this if your tank is empty rather than if you've got a tank full of dirty water.
If you've got a snorkel, you'll be right.
Rather you than me. Yeah, just something to look out for. Certainly when you're first installing the tank, or when you get your tank empty, just check the positioning of the diffusers to ensure that they're in the optimal position, so we get this really good fine bubbles coming into the tank. Now, on this final slide, this might scare some people.
This is some photo.
It's not particularly pretty, but customers may find this. I just wanted to draw this to people's attention. If you see this type of foam appearing in your tank, you'll notice that, of course, it's quite brown and scummy. It's not a rainbow color. Now, when we first get a treatment plant working, it takes a little bit of time for the biological process to get going, in which case you may get protein foam appearing on top of the tank. This is perfectly natural process, and it will disappear once you get the tank up and working correctly. Some people might think, oh my goodness,
something's gone wrong.
I might need to get this pumped out. That's not the case for this. That's not the case for this particular tank. If you were to have a lot more bubbles, which were lots whiter, and they have a rainbow-like tilt to them, this is very much what you see in relation to if the customer's using a lot of detergents and soap.
Too much cleaning.
So that would be a problem. We've not got the right conditions in the tank for the bacteria to grow and breed. But if you've got nice inverted commas brown foam in the tank, we're okay. But if you've got like a rainbow colored white foam, then yeah, that's something that would need to be addressed.
So that's protein foam.
That's protein foam, yeah.
How many grams of protein do you reckon's in that foam?
Let's not go there. It's not something that we want to talk about with dietary requirements. But yes, it basically there's a lot of organic material within the tank, which the bacteria is just becoming to digest, and that's why we get the foam.
So there'd be some pretty strong bacteria if they're consuming all that protein. They're making their way through a lot of sludge if they're consuming that much protein.
Yeah, so just something I want to draw to the customer's attention.
No.
You may get this if you've got your first system installed, it's getting up and working. This is something you might experience.
I think that's perfectly insightful. I'm I'm kind of glad you were asked to do this because one, I never knew about the protein foam. I kind of wish I hadn't. And also, I think more interestingly on the second photo on the second slide to show the difference between how a correct aeration is working and how an incorrect aeration system
the aeration
is working.
pattern is very important, and you should get not only, of course, in our tanks. It's something to look for in all manufactured treatment plants. To get the oxygen into the water, we need nice, fine little bubbles.
Yep.
And there's just something to consider: an appreciation of the tank treatment process, how the parts work to achieve this within the system. So,
and I think more importantly, I was just thinking about this slide too. It's actually, if you're not aware of this, it's quite easily to confuse because if you look at the image on the right, if you were to compare the two images in the isolation without the context we've spoken about, yes. You would assume that the correct version is the photo on the right, because for me, from my point of view, you're seeing more activity in the aeration process. So therefore, yes. You would assume there's a lot more air going into the system. However, it's not being dissolved in the water. So the photo on the left is actually how it should be.
Yeah, it's much better. This is something, of course, that we talk about with quite a lot of our accredited service providers. The first thing that our accredited service providers will immediately think is, if we've got dissolved oxygen level is low within our tank, I must increase the amount of time for aeration. Now, that's not always the case. We can't get the water or dissolved oxygen into the water anyway. We can, of course, increasing the aeration on the control panel is great. Certainly, if you've got a lot of sludge in your tank, as you get sludge build up within the tank, you will find that the bacteria will use that oxygen more quickly. So you can, of course, increase the oxygen in that way. It's also worth looking into the tank and actually checking out the aeration process, because if you've got very poor dissolved oxygen within the water, you've got all this pluming and volatile surface of the water. If we can't get the oxygen in, it doesn't matter how much you increase the runtime of the compressor, we're not getting the oxygen into the water. Yeah. So it's just another thing to consider when you're doing a servicing of the treatment plants. It's not only just increase the aeration time on the control panel, but also have a look in the tank, check out the activity there to make sure the additional work that the system is doing it in the right way.
Perfect. Is that everything you wanted to cover?
So.
Perfect. And I think that's a very good use of the project recap, especially for today's session. So now it's time to answer all the questions that have come in during today's live session. And holy moly, there is a big one I can see. But we'll get into that in a second. So first question that's come in is, what is the purpose of a sewage treatment plant?
Purpose of a treatment plant? Well, the main purpose, I suppose, is that we're incorporating it to protect the environment. Mm-hmm. And we've just discussed so far today, but to keep things short for this question, we do this by, of course, enhancing the environment, improving the environment inside the tank for the bacteria to grow and breed. And with that, we've also got the bacteria in the tank. They can then break down the incoming foul water to give us such good quality of effluent in the discharge. So the main purpose of a treatment plant is to protect the environment, and we do that by improving the conditions inside the tank for the growth of our good bacteria, so we get a very good quality of effluent.
Perfect. I believe that answers that one. And then the next one we have coming in. What can't you flush down the toilet if you have a tank installed? So either a septic tank, treatment plant installed.
Okay, this is quite a big question, because there's lots of things that people put down as their tanks, which some do without thinking about it. And if I was to suggest some things, like some people think, oh my goodness, people actually do that.
Yeah.
But yes, basically within our servicing manual, there's a whole A4 page basically detailing the types of things that you don't want to put down into your underground tank. Now, the initial things, which I suppose are the most important things, would be the things that are going to people will do in terms of their daily cleaning and cooking. So the first things first is it's referred to as fog, but it's fats, oils, and greases. So basically, all your cooking fats and oils. Basically, some people wash those off their frying pans directly down the sink into our treatment plants. That should be avoided. If it's going to be coming off of restaurants, for example, you should certainly have a grease trap prior coming into the treatment plant to take all of those away. Then, of course, there's cleaning products. Now, with cleaning products, it's generally okay to use these in moderation and Of course, generally, the types of cleaning products you can get biologically friendly cleaning products for treatment plants. Generally, the main thing you should do is not use an excessive amount in a short period of time. Also, chlorine-based products are particularly harsh, to try and stay away from these as you can. And yeah, favour the biological ones if you're feeling particularly cautious about looking after a treatment plant. Those are the types of things that people put down as the tank, which, of course, if it's going to be a holiday home, they might not even think about it. So these could be things like sanitary towels,
wet wipes.
There's things like I don't want to go into it, but there's all sorts of things that people put down. I could cotton buds. You could think about some metal objects like razor blades, especially if you've finished shaving potentially, or you've got plastic, rubber, wood, whatever it might be. We don't want it in our underground tank. Really, we want to have biological processed waste from humans coming into our tanks, so we can get that biological process going.
And it's not only the case for just tanks itself. So we see, you see horrific images online of fatbergs in pipelines. So it's very much the same case. If you're properly done as a septic tank, to not put these sorts of materials down your toilet as well.
Yes, it's very important. And yeah, I mean, you do get things like hair, of course, when you have bars and stuff. That's not as bad, but excessive amounts of long hair can wrap around parts, components inside any sort of treatment plant. So it's just something to bear out for. If you've got submersible pumps, for example, the diffusers in our tanks, if you've got that wrapping around, of course, that's limiting the oxygen process. Really is important to consider what you put it down into your tank. I mean, it might not even be the homeowner's fault if you've just got your tank installed and you've had a load of DIY on your property. The decorators could be putting paint and thinners and strippers down with the utility sink, and that could go into the treatment plant. So you may have very cloudy white water in your tank. Again, not great. So again, I do kind of advise people to be sensible about what they do and be aware of how their foul water is being processed and discharged from their property.
Perfect. I believe that answers that one in much more detail than you would want. And then the next question we have up on the screen is, can you use bleach if you have a septic tank installed? I think we kind of touched on this a second ago.
Just kind of jumped ahead of the gun there. So yeah, bleaches, detergents, to keep this, can be used in line with the treatment plant. Again, I stress that it's used in moderation. It can be tricky when you say in moderation. Of course, if it's a standard homeowner property, you're cleaning your toilets 2-3 times a week, that's fine. If it's going to be a holiday home where you've got a cleaner coming in and they're doing all the bed linens, they're cleaning all of the toilets with quite aggressive cleaning products, we're flushing all of those cleaning products into our underground tank in one go. And the treatment plant environments doesn't like that. It likes basically consistency. So if we got, so if you can keep it consistent as possible, that is the best position we can be in. Outside of that, just try and favour the biological washing detergents where you can. They're slightly more friendly towards the biological process in the tank, and try and stay away from the chlorine products, which again are particularly harsh in terms of the bacteria in terms of the tank. I'll leave it there because I can talk about chlorine dosing in a lot more detail, but that's a topic for another time.
That's a topic for another time. That's a topic when I'm not doing it. The next question we have: can a tank be installed at the front of a property?
Okay. With positioning of tank, I think this is something very much to consider in detail. Whether it's be property, side, back, wherever it might be. When we refer to the building regulations, section H, which kind of details advice on positioning of foul water treatment plants, they generally say install the tank 7 meters away from the property. This, of course, is not possible in some cases, in which case you need to come up with the best possible scenario. You also need to consider the desludging vehicle that's going to come in and empty the tank. So with desludging of tanks, of course, if you're going to have your tank right at the back of your garden, the desludging vehicle needs to have access to get there. And normally they come with 30-meter long desludging suction lines. So that's to consider. So by all means, you can put a tank in the front of your garden. If you've got a very long driveway to your garden, absolutely go for it. It's just important to bear in mind that with treatment plants in general, if things aren't going as we would like in terms of the biological process on the side of the tank, you will get smells generated from it. So having that directly next to your living room window or by your patio, wherever it might be, if you haven't got the biological process inside your tank, it's going to smell and you are going to notice it. So be sensible about where you position your tank. So if something does go wrong, or the tank's becoming full, it's an indication we need to get it emptied. Smell will be generated. Yeah, be sensible about these things. Put the tank in a position which is going to be optimal for your project. If that's the front of the garden, great, put it in the front of your garden. That's certainly going to be a lot more beneficial in terms of a desludging vehicle when they come to empty out, because they don't have to drag things through to the back. So yeah, by all means, in front of the garden is absolutely fine.
Perfect. I believe, yep, we've got a thumbs up, and I believe that's all the questions that have come in during today's presentation, or live stream, sorry. Thank you, David, for your time today. You've been wonderful as always, and thank you for sharing all that detail on the project recap. That was certainly insightful for not only myself, but I'm sure the others watching it. And thank you guys for tuning and watching and taking the time out of your day to watch another live session of ours. And make sure you're back next Tuesday for another live session. Enjoy that. Until then, enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you very much.